First of all, thanks a lot to the organizers for such a wonderful workshop. Today, I'm gonna tell you about the work I did with my supervisor, Sarah Wade. And this is a work where we developed a kind of Bayesian neural networks, which we call variational bow-tie neural network. So first of all, why BNNs? Well, as you know, neural networks achieved quite remarkable performance across various domains recently, but they remain highly non-transparent and often regarded as black boxes. They tend to be overconfident in the predictions, provide poor, if any, uncertainty estimation, and sensitive to adversarial attacks. And so Bayesian neural networks emerge as a compelling extension of conventional models. And the Bayesian approach allows to express and quantify uncertainties associated with the model's predictions. And indeed, they also control the model complexity and build in the regularization into the model directly. And indeed, they improve accuracy and are more robust to gradient-based adversarial attacks. So consider standard neural network, feed-forward neural network. It maps inputs to the outputs through the sequence of hidden layers. And since being Bayesians, we treat weights as random variables and dot with some prior distribution. And assuming that we got the posterior on the weights, we can obtain the predictions by marginalizing over the posterior on the weights, or in general, marginalizing over the posterior on the parameters of the network. We get the posterior predicted distribution. And in this way, we account for the uncertainty for the model's uncertainty. Unfortunately, as in the vast majority of modern statistical models, you can't obtain posterior by simply using Bayes' theorem, and you have to utilize approximate Bayesian inference, or if being post-Bayesian, generalized Bayesian inference. And so the posterior computation is one of the core challenges, and another core challenge is the prior specification. And so I will address the prior first, and then I will come to the computation bit. So in general, defining priors gets more and more difficult, and encoding prior beliefs gets more and more difficult as models get more complex. And when parameters may not have a direct interpretation, and weights of the neural network don't have a direct interpretation, designing a prior which adequately covers potentially high-dimensional space gets intricate. And in general, one wants to define priors which lead to models with desirable properties. And among these properties, we have we think of models that generalize well, that leads to reliable uncertainty quantification, that also is, if possible, computations. And sparsity is often among the list of desired model properties. That's because larger training sets and bigger network structures always increase storage and computational burdens. And additionally, sparse neural networks may improve the calibration and may recover the potentially sparse structure of the target function. And whilst you can endow sparsity structure by implementing classical two-group discrete mixture priors, spike and slab priors, these could be challenging due to the need to consider possible non-zero and zero weights. So it's some sort of combinatorial problem. And instead, we focus on the continuous global local scale mixtures of generalized inverse Gaussians, which come from the hierarchical modeling. And the idea is standard. you want to shrink out less important weights and leave the large ones. Here on the left-hand side, I have a marginal density on the weights obtained if we keep the global parameter fixed. So some of the examples of generalized inverse Gaussians, and for example, if we start with the gamma priors, we get a purple line, and this is Laplace distribution, and we are in the case known as Bayesian lasso. And on the right-hand side, what I wanted to show is that the weights within the same layer are not gonna be independent, and that's why the conditional density of a certain weight from one layer conditioned on different weights differs, and we get this difference densities. So the network now looks like this. We have hierarchical structure of the priors. We have global parameter tau. We have local shrinkage parameter psi. Both are generalized inverse Gaussians, and weights are normal with the scale being product of those. And before coming to the computations, so we defined the priors. Before coming to the computations, let me address the bow tie in the name of the work. So this comes from the way conditional distribution of the activations looks. So consider stochastic activations, normal, scale being sigma, mean being rectified linear unit function applied to the linear combination of units of previous layer. And since ReLU is not ideal for performing approximate Bayesian inference, could lead to some challenges, we replace ReLU of Z with the element-wise product of Z with the Bernoulli random variable, And here under the Bernoulli, I have sigma, which is just sigmoid function, and T is a fixed temperature parameter. And so when we look at the conditional density, if the temperature parameter varies from 0 to 1, if it's 0, we just recover ReLU. But if it's not 0, then the density somewhat resembles a bow tie. I mean, you kind of have to stare at this picture to see a bow tie here, but that's the name which came from the like Smith, Lawson, and Linderman. So questions to them, but I kind of try to visualize this. And well, we have Bernoulli, it's also far from being ideal for the kind of inference we want to do. But we have the Polya-Gamma data augmentation trick, and with that, we get a model with conditionally linear and Gaussian activations. And so now we are ready to come to the inference bit, but that's how the network looks. So my purple letters are random variables, weights, biases, variance, and navy ones are just hyperparameters. T is a temperature, it's fixed. And the inference, as you know, you can do sampling, but you can instead focus on the optimization problem. And that's what we do. And in particular, we use variational inference. So we are not kind of very cool post-Bayesian here. We are just variational inference. And the idea is probably like this is the very classical picture accompanying the talks on this variational inference. What you want to do, you want to approximate your posterior with some Q. Your Q comes from the variational family of tractable distributions, and you want to minimize some measure of distance between your approximation and the true posterior. And you do this in the sense of certain divergence. And the most typical one, the super classical one, is the reverse Kullback-Leibler divergence. As you have seen today, it's equivalent the task of minimizing the KL is equivalent to maximizing the evidence lower bounds. And so that's the task on which we focus. And variational family plays a huge role in the algorithm. In general, you want to have a flexible family because you want to get as close as possible to the true posterior. But at the same time, if you define an overly complex family, you might not be able to actually compute it anymore. And the most basic family defined here is a mean field variational family, which assumes factorization across latent variables. And if the family is not fully factorized and retains some dependencies between variables, it retains some structure, and in this case, it is often called structured. And what I'm using today is actually the classical one of the first algorithms, I guess, developed with VI, is the coordinate ascent variational inference algorithm. It iteratively optimizes each factor of the posterior, variational posterior, whilst keeping others fixed. And in this way, it finds the local optimum of elbow. So in this case, for example, we don't have the reparameterization trick you have seen today because we are just using coordinate ascent. And so with that, let me define a family for our model. So the family is going to look like this. So indeed, we have some level of factorization, but this is still a structured family and not a fully factorized, because we don't assume factorization independence factorization across layers, nor do we make any assumptions on the distributional form of each component. And the good thing is that the closed form coordinate ascent variational inference updates are available, and we can employ it to infer the posterior. And so here, I just wanted to illustrate that indeed, if we consider the factor corresponding to the activation, we have factors for the activation, for the Polya-Gamma data augmentation variable, the omega. We have 3 factors for weights and shrinkage and 1 for variance. And so what I want to illustrate is the non-independence across layers bit by providing you with the way the factor for the activation looks. So it's conditionally Gaussian given the previous layer, and the joint density of activations in 2 consecutive layers further illustrates this. And just to briefly finish off with the example, the super classical, one of the super classical examples from the UC Irvine machine learning repository. So here we compare 5 possible models. One is just CAVI. I have just shown you the blue line, the one which says VVNN. One run of CAVI. Then I note that elbow, yes, we are guaranteed to reach the local optimum of elbow, but it's local, so ensembles make sense, and that's why I consider ensembles of CAVI approximations, the purple line. And finally, since CAVI can be expensive for larger data sets, it's easily extended to SVI, which uses natural gradients and subsampling and mini batches. So I also consider ensembles of SVI of bow tie. And I compare it to automatic differentiation variational inference with the mean field Gaussian family and Hamiltonian Monte Carlo with no U-turn sampler. So HMC seems to be an unbeatable standard, but it takes a while. However, bow tie seems to improve compared to the ADVI with the mean field family. And also SVI is cheaper than Cali, but that there's some sort of trade-off between predictive accuracy and quality of predictive distributions. And yeah, I found ensembling particularly helpful here, but it's reasonable. ELVO is non-convex. Yeah, that's all I had for today. Thanks one more time. The paper is currently under review, but the preprint is available on archive. Yeah, thank you.
So my experience with optimizing with Bayesian inference is essentially usually collapsed Bayesian inference funds. They will perform better, but if you can get into sort of like local optimum, but it's difficult to automate them. The uncollapsed ones will be easier, but usually the answers I get will be suboptimal. That's my experience from latent variable models. So I haven't seen any kind of things doing this thing on this neural network, basic neural network scale. So can you comment on your experience?
Do you mean?
Basically, what's your take in terms of doing collapsed Bayesian inference versus just do review for all and then just let it stochastic gradient handle all of things in basic neural network context?
Well, by collapsed, you mean the kind of video, or I think I didn't really get the question.
Well, for example, like this, you have a lot of these latent variables, right? You basically have a structure. So one way to think about constructing Bayesian inference is you can marginalize out some of them, and then you still keep some others, right? Right.
Yeah.
That's basically what people talk about that they collapse Bayesian.
Yeah. Now I see. Well, I haven't compared it. It's also called like a hierarchical variational models, right? It's just a different way of encoding structure, because they kind of begin with the mean field and then add on top some structure trying to rebuild these connections. And we didn't break the connections in the first place so it's a bit different in this sense, because we don't have to like marginalize out, because we don't split it, if it makes sense.
I guess the reason why I asked in here is essentially, if I remember it correctly, the Polya-Gamma trade, right, was originally developed for this logistic.
Yeah, exactly.
Actually trying to make sampling work better, right? But we are in a very inference domain. We are not doing sampling, we are doing approximation.
Yeah, but right. Well, since it's data augmentation, we are not changing the result. We because like the integral is going to be the same, even though we are adding this data augmentation Polya-Gamma variable. It's kind of, we are not. Yeah, it's the marginal is going to be the same, so it shouldn't ruin things. But yeah.
Okay, we can talk about that.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Sorry, just one quick question. So does your like query have a closed form update or that? Or you need to activate it?
Yeah, the updates are closed form, so like no gradient estimators, not just closed form update. I mean, you have to write down maybe equations a lot, but yeah.
I think that's all we've got time for. Sorry.